Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Leadnap Gaming. Today we're going to take a deeper look at the Carrack. We're going to go over some of what CIG got wrong, and so much of what they got right.
Systems activated. Systems on.
Carrack is most definitely love, and will certainly be home. CIG really knocked it out of the ballpark with the Carrack, and while we take a look at some of these elements, we'll also touch on a little bit of what CIG got wrong. Now, there'll certainly be some salt mining here, and I can assure you that in some places, I'm being rather picky. But let's get rolling. The first improvement in ship design hits you as you're walking up. The cargo ramp has been a spot of controversy amongst the fanbase, and for a reasonable reason. The original ramp was narrow, and the whole ship was hoisted up on tall landing struts. CIG shrank the struts, giving the Carrack the sort of bulldog about to pounce look it has today, and in the process, adjusted the angle of the ramp while closed. Now, sure, this does create a sort of whale mouth for some people, especially because the ramp is so much longer as a result of the changed angle. But the real impressive win here is width. This is the first ship I think that really has a ramp that's user-friendly when trying to drive a vehicle up. Now, like a lot of what we look at today, the good and the bad is mixed together here. The ramp takes quite a while to lower completely, and in PTU, occasionally flips the ship when it impacts the ground. But this ramp gives you the space to actually fit two vehicles in the bay. Oh, that's right. Probably should have mentioned that too. A pair of Ursas will fit side by side with no issues. Sure, on the Valk you can fit more than one vehicle if you're willing to play a little Tetris, but Carrack just lets you drive them on up and go. Even the worst driver will be able to avoid the fine for bumping into your own ship while parking. Chalk that up to a positive. The next point is a sort of mixed bag, and while in the end I think it's a positive, I've elected to include it here because I think it develops into a really important point to follow. I had high hopes that the area occupied by the cartography suite would be a captain's suite instead. I envisioned sitting at my desk thinking about the next destination and looking out over the breadth of my ship as it heads into the unknown. The additional side windows I thought would be ideal for great views from the bed and elsewhere. The current location of the captain's dorm is adjacent to the bridge, as would be more important to a combat vessel. To be clear here, I view larger ships in Star Citizen more like large ships in real life at sea. Historically, a ship's captain had two cabins on larger ships such as cruisers and above, a sea cabin and a day cabin. The day cabin was a smaller space adjacent to the bridge where during wartime operations the captain would have access to a bed and a working space, but also the bridge at short notice. The sea cabin harkens back to an age when even in port crews remained on board the ship, so the captain had a much larger and better appointed suite, often near the rear of the ship, where dignitaries could be received, formal meetings and functions occurred, and the captain had generally a comfortable living space. For an explorer, I saw great value in the sea cabin approach. After all, Carrack captains will remain aboard for long durations, and we'll be talking about crew lifestyle aboard ship shortly. That said, I was slightly disappointed even at CitizenCom when I saw the door going towards the bridge and rightfully guessed that that was the captain's quarters. I bring all this up to make the following important distinction. The Carrack was originally designed in lore for the UE Navy, and is, before an exploration ship, a combat ship. If you plan to head into the deep unknowns in comfort, you're on the wrong ship. I think at the end of the day, this is a positive because it delivers value to the 600 as well. The 600i is really the ship that the Carrack commercial sells. Are you a lone wolf looking to see everything the verse has? 600. Want to head into the unknown and return with a profit? That's the Carrack. Carrack enjoys comforts, sure, for long-duration voyages in space, but no one on the Carrack is actually going to be living comfortably. Even the captain. The dorm gets that right, even if the name is kind of funny, because the captain has the same size bed as everyone else in the crew. They get their own shower and toilet, but again, no different than what everyone else in the UE Navy has. This is hard to explain and sell when the Carrack nails form and function better than any other large ship. This is simply a result of the excessive amount of hours and years of ship design experience CIG has developed at this point. CIG thought more about how the Carrack crew would do what they do in this design than they've ever done before, and then they improved on it. All of Carrack's habitation elements share a deck. All of Carrack's function compartments share the same area. The layout follows best practices that real shipbuilders apply today to warships. Compare again the Carrack to its exploration companion, the 600i, specifically the exploration model, and the 600 has crew accommodations littered in different areas of the ship. To apply repairs to the shield generator, you must traverse the whole ship, turn back, and then access the compartment bays via the entertainment space. Well, the crew compartment is actually adjacent to that. You have to take an entirely different route again on multiple decks just to get to it. The Starfarer is no better. Sure, this time all of the crew accommodations are all unified, but you must navigate a dense warren of hallways and compartments to get there. Anyone who owns a Starfarer knows the odd layout like the back of their hand, and sure, there's a defensive advantage perhaps that unwelcomed boarders don't know port from starboard, but the design just feels amateur to the Carrack's intuitive arrangement. What really sells this perhaps is the change in design language. The habitation decks are intentionally well lit, white-walled, and warm-toned. If you were placed blindfolded on a Carrack and then given the ability to see, you could almost immediately determine where on the ship you are. Every hallway on a Starfarer or a Hammerhead looks identical. The working spaces are different, darker, more suited to keeping your ability to see displays and screens or damage. The cartography deck is a great example. The red lighting doesn't hamper your dark eyesight, all while making it easier to make out the massive map display. This is just an example. The bridge is another spot. A lack of strong lighting prevents glare on the massive forward canopy and keeps everyone able to spot dangers outside the ship. This isn't meant to be some sort of morphologist-inspired take either. Simply put, Carrack is the first ship CIG has made that changes the way the interior looks and is lit in different parts of the ship. Up until now, generally speaking, the inside of a ship was uniform in how it was presented. This is a positive. These elements are also critical for psychological reasons, as they promote calm and sanity if you actually had to remain inside the Carrack for an entire year. Contrast that to a Hammerhead, and after a week, the walls are closing in on you. No one is going to argue the Carrack is small, but the spaces on the equally sized Caterpillar feel small, claustrophobic, and haphazard. The Carrack, on the other hand, has space, like this area here, and some of this junction could have been consumed with extra components or some other compartment, sure. However, giving you this open space to rest your eyes makes the Carrack feel so much larger than it really is. Some of this was also achieved with the unique honeycomb approach to deck arrangement, which allows this central hallway here to steal space from neighboring compartments without you feeling it. In more simple terms, on paper, if you took the widths of these compartments individually and added them, the ship would be wider than it really is. The habitation compartments on the Caterpillar are physically larger, but since Carrack's passageways and spaces feel larger, the Carrack is more comfortable. Some of that is certainly design language. Drake ships are not intended to feel comfortable. But the value here is that Carrack comes off as the sort of ship you wouldn't mind being stuck on for a month. I could go on, but I want to point out that if you tour an 890 Jump and then you tour a Carrack, you get the impression that they're relatively the same size, yet one is significantly larger than the other. To make the veteran comparison to understand why this is so successful, let's look at three ships and their real-world lifestyle equivalents. The Retaliator bomber has no comforts whatsoever and follows the operational routine of a World War II bomber. At most, you'll be on that ship for 2 to 3 days. You don't live on it, and you don't stay on it. Next is the Hammerhead. Similar to a conventional warship, 6 months on station is going to be normal. But the ship will make routine liberty calls at ports, and the crew will have a break from shipboard life. Carrack is like a submarine. For the next 6 to 9 months, these walls are going to be your world. The Carrack is simply the first ship CIG has managed to make that genuinely feels like you could do that. A strong positive. This isn't, however, perfect. This is unfortunately where the rough edges of the Carrack begin to show, and yes, these are relatively minor and overly critical. To begin with, the workshop has a lot of problems. This is the critical tool storage for the entire ship. and it couldn't be much further away from the engineering and primary location of all of the ship's components that might need repair. Granted, the compartment is promoted as a space to repair things like FPS weapons or smaller handheld components, yet there are no visible tool storages in engineering, and in the same vein, while the captain's bunk has 2 bright lights that will certainly prevent you from getting any level of sleep, the workbench has one tiny dim light to make sure you never see what screws to remove or how to get that wire connected again. Another issue for me is the single berthing. This shouldn't even make the list, except that the Carrack is so well thought out and considered, this should have been too. The crew habitation area is actually rather large, with a common room, 2 separate facilities serving personal hygiene, and the crew berthing. Anyone who ever lived on a warship or in tents doing 24-hour operations could tell you that everyone sharing the same single berthing is going to get old when you have a night shift and a day shift. Eliminating the pool table that we can't actually use in game for a smaller common room, while removing the couches in the berthing, would allow 2 smaller berthings to have been placed. Then, instead of splitting latrine from shower, you could do like the captain's head and split them between the 2 on either side of the common room. This is a real-life consideration that will never matter in the video game of Star Citizen. A nitpicked con for sure, but I genuinely wish it would have been done this way. Not that it's going to prevent you from loving your Carrack in any way. A noticeable omission that will certainly be noticed by some Carrack captains is the lack of a solid station for the captain. CIG tends to struggle with this from time to time, quite noticeably here. Most Carrack captains will sit in this chair, because most Carrack captains will inevitably fly their own ship. The truth, however, is this is really the pilot's seat. Some of CIG's ships acknowledge this, like the Starfarer, where the captain has a station like everyone else on the bridge. The 600i would be this way, except during most of a shift, the captain probably is going to be the primary pilot, given the way the 600i would in lore terms be used. The problem is the dual sci-fi styles that inform on Star Citizen. There's the Star Wars model, where we most often see the captain as the primary pilot. Think Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon. Then there's the Star Trek model of a commanding officer who barks orders to the crew to carry out, yet doesn't themselves actually deliver physical input. The Carrack, like some other ships, falls into a weird middle ground. Say, any Empire ship in Star Wars. Notice their commanders are always standing on the bridge, but they have no station of their own. Effectively, the captain's station would be, should be, and is the captain's desk. He heads to the bridge when needed for input, but otherwise his duties generally involve reading readiness reports, balancing fuel consumption numbers, and studying star maps. Alas, then, the need for the sea cabin I spoke of earlier, where you could as captain look up from your desk and see where the ship was going. Here, Carrack really demonstrates its focus on the Enterprise Star Destroyer model. As captain, your job's at your desk, in cartography, or checking out that broken component with the engineering officer. Yes, I've just simultaneously pissed off both Trekkies and Star Wars fans. Unlike a Star Destroyer or the Enterprise, though, Carrack doesn't just float in space, and it's hard to imagine as Carrack makes entry into the atmosphere of some exotic planet, the captain idly waiting for a report from the bridge that the Carrack has landed safely. It seems obvious to me that the command station, then, is the intended station on the bridge for the captain, where, if desired, the captain could even take the reins. This station is poorly thought out. The problem I have with it is twofold. Eventually, such re-entry is supposed to be a little rough. Everyone else is seatbelted in for the rough ride, but you, the most important crew member, are about to demonstrate from the second-story balcony why seatbelts are required in all 50 states. Carrack is a military vessel, which means the captain must have a general quarters station on the bridge. Similarly, I can't see many actual Carrack captains spending their hours of gameplay at their desk in actual practice. In real life, sure, such an accommodation would be fantastic, but in an MMORPG, it just seems strangely separate from the rest of the crew. Players who have real crews or even NPC crews are going to want to spend the time exploring the verse from the bridge. Sure, they won't get tired standing all day, but the lack of an actual captain's station on the bridge, like that of the Starfarer, sticks out as a pretty solid negative. Today this might not be true, but when the Polaris, Javelin, Kraken, Merchantman, and whole series are in the game, the majority of actual Carrack captains are going to style themselves after Captain Kirk, not Han Solo. In the end, the real crux of the problems on Carrack's design are the result of a lore gap. In reality, Carrack is the large endgame exploration ship on the roster. In lore, however, Carrack is a military pathfinder sold to the civilian market as a decent exploration ship. This explains everything we just spoke about with the captain, but also a critical issue that Carrack has as a deep space explorer. A military pathfinder wouldn't need to refine quantum fuel. Once it performs its reconnaissance, the fleet's logistical arm will come to its location, providing refueling. The problem is, a deep space exploration vessel requires quantum fuel refining, because you're going where there's going to be no gas station, and there is no logistical arm. That's why the Freelancer Dur can refine its own, because it was designed for long duration exploration. You'll have plenty of time to fix components in the workshop, because when you run out of quantum fuel, the trillions of kilometers back to inhabited and charted space is going to take a really long time at 1200 meters a second. It isn't that I don't think the armory in the Carrack isn't amazing, but quantum refining equipment fits in a small part of the Freelancer. There was ample room to put the equipment in on the Carrack. I'm not asking for Starfarer levels of refining, but something to make it possible to not run out of gas after a day of quantum travel. Like I said before, these are small issues that, sure, have large impacts on some gameplay, but overall, the Carrack is a masterpiece. That is, however, its largest problem. It brings a new level of versatility, arrangement, and functionality to Star Citizen, all packed into a single ship. It is truly remarkable what is packed inside of it. It isn't that an Aquila wouldn't be a bad exploration ship, but would you really want to take one of those if you could take one of these? Carrack builds an interesting gap, because today it does nothing that the Caterpillar can't do. It is no better an explorer than the 600i, the Aquila, the Corsair, or even the Freelancer Dur in actual gameplay. Yet as a Carrack owner, who happens to own all of the other ships as well, I struggle to imagine using one of those instead of the Carrack. Of course, the Carrack is the endgame content for exploration, so it'll be exciting to see how CIG creates value in the other exploration ships. The Carrack isn't perfect. It really is not ideal for solo exploration at all. But it's good that it isn't perfect. Icarus flew too close to the sun and melted his wings. I'll continue to look out my hangar deck from the airlock and think of what could have been. I'll continue to use the gunner's station or the starboard co-pilot chair as a captain's chair. Like all Star Citizen ships, the Carrack will eventually receive a working pass where one or two of these features could make an appearance. For the list of problems to be so small and so minor, the Carrack is so close to perfection, you would be crazy to call it flawed. What do you think? Have you found an issue that breaks the Carrack for you? Let's talk about it in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like and share this video, subscribe if you haven't, and I will catch you all next time.